I would love if you could tell us more about toxic load. What is it and how did you become aware of it?
So toxic load came into my radar when I think I was sitting with another female partner in the firm, and she'd explained to me that in order for her to reach the next level of her career, she was pregnant with her second child, and it meant a lot of travel for her in a firm outside of where we worked. And she actually lost that baby because of the stress and the pressure. And so then I thought to myself, okay, so I'm clearly being told here that there is a connection between how we treat ourselves, our bodies, what's going on in the environment, and our mindset, and how able we are to do the one job I had felt I wanted to do on earth, which was to be a mother. So toxic load is an interesting thing. I mean, it's basically how much unnatural or toxic or burden-like poisons, I guess is the strongest word I could use, that the body can hold before the balance is tipped and you start to see side effects. I always say to people, don't be afraid of toxic load, because the way in which our body is designed is so meticulous. We are a detoxification machine. But because of the state of the world and the environment, and a little bit of dysfunction in our thinking. And you say, us women that get these blinkers on about what success looks like, and we work at all costs, and rest is seen as weak. And then we overlay that with makeup and skincare, and everything needs to be waterproof and stay on for 12 hours, and the chemicals that are involved in that. Then we see that balance of toxic load tipping over, and that's where the body becomes sluggish and everything becomes a problem.
Good morning, Catherine. I'm so excited to have you on the show. After seeing you for so many hours on my YouTube, on my Instagram, looking at your face while doing my own makeup and skincare, it's a bit of a surreal moment for me to have you here with me. So I'm super excited.
Thanks, Charlene. I'm so excited to be here. And just the few seconds we've had before we started, there's a lot we could get into just to add value to the lives of other women through what we've learned. So I'm really happy to be here. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Could you tell us a little bit more about how you became an ambassador for holistic wellness and specifically skincare? What is your life journey and what compelled you to work in that field, Catherine?
It's such a fascinating question. I actually, it was all through trial and error, as we see with our lives as women. At the peak of my career, I was a partner in a wealth management firm in the city of London, working at Bank Station, all the hours that God gave me, and really in that kind of mindset, probably slightly burnt out, although I've always been better at trying to manage my time, but definitely unwell and not in the optimal state in which my body needed to be. And it was when my husband and I decided we would start to have children. I was pregnant with my first son, and I thought, gosh, I'm actually not that well, and I need to do a lot to change the way that I'm living in order to sustain this pregnancy, feel optimal, get my mind right, and just to kind of retake my life. Like, what's it going to look like the next 10, 20 years with children in it? And that's where this massive big U-turn came. And I started to look at how to eat to support a pregnancy outside of just relying on supermarket shelf supplements. And that's when I knocked on this topic of toxic load and what I was exposing myself to through things that were supposedly good for me. Things like certain supplements, which are, there's supplements and there's supplements. Definitely the food that I was eating, the environment in which I'd put myself in pressure-wise, work-wise, time-wise. And so that opened up this whole new world of doing things more naturally for me. And it was a complete game changer. And just that little door that opened transformed my whole entire life and switched me from being a corporate partner, A-type woman into an entrepreneur, mother before that even. And it's just been a fascinating journey filled with lots of trial and error and tons of failure, but none of it which I would change for the world.
Oh, well, I love that you shared that because I think we have a bit of a similar journey in terms of having that pivotal moment. I started my career in big law and I was an attorney for many years before I decided to become an entrepreneur and become a clinical hypnotherapist. And the reason why I switched was, to be honest, because I completely burnt out and realized that my versional notion of sustaining success at the time was either non-existent or based on a completely unhealthy foundation. I had no measure of success other than corporate success, but my health was falling apart. I just didn't realize it until one day I hit a wall. And I love the fact that your desire to be a mom really helped you realize that you had to take a bit of an inventory and audit your habits. And I would love if you could tell us more about toxic load. What is it and how did you become aware of it?
So exactly at that point in my life, that question leads in so nicely, was when I started to look around and assess all the things you just talked about. You get to this point in your life and you think, okay, wow, I've been driven so hard since 18 years old, and I must have been 28 at this time. So, these 10 years I've done, I've got to this idea. Everyone was congratulating me on being made up as a partner. And I don't know about you, but especially working as an attorney, we said before we started, the resilience in women in the legal field, female women practicing as lawyers, attorneys. I mean, because of the hours and because of the pressure, I'd never seen anything like it. And most of my clients were coming from women my same age who were in this field of law, because they would be working with a dispute, a family dispute or a marital dispute. And then there would be funds, and those funds would need to be invested either on part of the wife or the husband. And then we would be the house that would then do the investing. So I was close, akin to these women in our journeys through, we're young, we're dynamic, we're working all hours that God gave us. We're going through all the levels of this corporate world that we saw we could kind of see. And then when it came to the childbearing years, it was too difficult to cope. And especially for the girls in law, because of the pay per hour billing, etc. You can't actually do what anyone else can do if you want a mother and you want to sustain a pregnancy and you want to do it well. So toxic load came into my radar when I think I was sitting with another female partner in the firm, and she'd explained to me that in order for her to reach the next level of her career, she was pregnant with her second child, and it meant a lot of travel for her in a firm outside of where we worked. And she actually lost that baby because of the stress and the pressure and so then I thought to myself, okay, so I'm clearly being told here that there is a connection between how we treat ourselves, our bodies, what's going on in the environment, and our mindset, and how able we are to do the one job I had felt I wanted to do on earth, which was to be a mother. And this doesn't set apart women that don't want to have children or however. It's just about how we feel in our own bodies. And then that's when I started to dig deep. So toxic load is an interesting thing. I mean, it's basically how much unnatural or toxic or burden-like poisons, I guess is the strongest word I could use, that the body can hold before the balance is tipped and you start to see side effects of that level basically in your body. I always say to people, don't be afraid of toxic load, because the way in which our body is designed is so meticulous. We are a detoxification machine. We detoxify really beautifully, and we have all these measures in place that help us. But because of the state of the world and the environment and a little bit of dysfunction in our thinking, and you say us women that get these blinkers on about what success looks like, and we work at all costs, and rest is seen as weak, etc., and then we overlay that with pesticides and herbicides and all the things that are going on in the world, and then we overlay that with makeup and skincare, and everything needs to be waterproof and stay on for 12 hours, and the chemicals that are involved in that. Then we see that balance of toxic load tipping over, and that's where the body becomes sluggish and everything becomes a problem. And when we're out of that place of homeostasis or balance rather, that's where we get chronic inflammation, and that's where we get dis-ease. So I'm quite grateful to this lady, actually. And it's funny, since you were in the legal field, it's the first time I've actually thought of this conversation with this woman in a long time. It really struck me. I was like, at what cost? At what cost does someone draw the line? And she could only, in hindsight, look back and be like, that was too high a price to pay, you know? And that began my journey with toxic load. And funny enough, there and then I went home and I was on Pregnacare, which is a supplement they sell in Boots. It's full of a whole lot of synthetic vitamin A, C, not the healthiest form of supplement. I threw it in the bin. All my nausea went away. And I started to make broth at home. And that's how my first business, Ossa Organic, was born. And that was in 2013. So that just opened up this doorway to me of, I can live naturally. I don't need to rely on what I'm being told. And I can build a life that serves me first and foremost. And that's where entrepreneurship, and as you know, down the line, all those things come in. You can be successful. You can thrive. And I will soon be the mother of 4 children. And you can be a good wife, but it all looks a lot different to how we've been told, is what I discovered.
I love that you're just saying that, the and, because I think very often in the corporate world, we are made to feel that it's an or equation. and law firms, investment banks lose so many talents, wonderful, brilliant, kick-ass women that want to be mom or are becoming mom, and actually they realize, that it's getting all too much, or they continue to show up for work and obviously to be the best version of the moms they want to be, but they feel totally overwhelmed, burnout, and at night it's constant mom guilt. It's that overwhelm. It's I'm not present enough with my kids, or I'm not working hard enough. Am I going to make MD? Am I going to make partner? Am I going to make equity partner? Am I going to pick up my kids? Are they going to be upset with me? It's just always that dialogue, right? I recently talked to one of I call them high billing, high flying client, and she's a super mom, right? She's a wonderful mother and she has 3 children, but she was also recently made MD and she flies around the world. And her youngest son came onto the plane because they fly all the time and said, Mommy, can we sit at the back today? And she said, What do you mean, sweetie? We're sitting at the front. Mommy's busy and mommy needs to sit at the front of the plane so that she can get out quickly and mommy needs to work. And he said, Yeah, mommy, but I notice the mommies at the back, they talk more.
Yeah. Oh, gosh, it gives me goosebumps. It's, out of the mouths of babes, don't they say that what our children tell us is the truest thing? And for me, I can only speak to what happened to me at that point where I was up in the morning, out the door, and I did feel like a super mom. But there was like a piece of that puzzle that just was missing for me. And it nagged at me enough that as I built Ossa through making broth and all this kind of stuff, and it showed legs and being something else I could put this drive I have inside of me into, because I wasn't going to, I always in my mind, I shamed a stay-at-home mom. Do you know what I mean? That's not me. I'm far too dynamic for that, or whatever it might be. Not knowing that was the piece of the puzzle that I was missing, but I still needed to have something to put my energy and my gifts into, if that makes sense. But a word like that from a child, and for me it was less. My child couldn't speak at the time because I think he was young. I walked out of my partnership job in 2018, so 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Yeah, I mean, no, I was only made up in 15. I was only 3 years a partner. And I walked out because that feeling became so overwhelming. So for me, it had to be a choice. I knew that if I wanted to feel like I was giving my all to this business, which was growing, and I was a partner, and there was huge opportunities, and that it would mean the sacrifice of my children. But I knew that if I built something on my own, by my own design, there would be less of a sacrifice. Now I have a team. I voice note them what to do because I don't have time to go on my email and message, because I want to drive my children to school. I want to be there in the afternoons. I want to do all the things that I wanted to do. And so the corporate world was too limiting for me. By the grace of God, I had a boss in the corporate world who was very respectful of the work that I did. And I know that women that are wired the way that I am, when we work, we work. Do you know what I mean? It's like, this is work. And the other thing I was realizing was, because I was so driven and I felt so dynamic in my role, I could do my job quite easily and quite efficiently. So I would say some days, I want to go home at 2:00. I need to get home to my children. And he would be like, go. Because my work was, and I didn't have a desk job where I had to do reports or travel or anything like that. But I had targets to meet, for sure. And even with that really lovely support from this man, I think it was one day I was in a meeting and it was with a client that had 50 million to invest, a young Russian woman. She was a mom, same age as me. And I was like, this is great. I earn commission off of the investments. So the whole thing was just amazing. And I was taking notes about this client. And I looked at my notepad, and my notepad in huge just said, quit your job. It was like God telling me, just there's more for you. It just looks different to how you imagine. So I can't speak to everyone who's in the corporate world and say, quit your job and go out on your own. You can't say that. But, when a child says something like that to you, I suppose it's at what point you draw that line. Same as this lovely partner, this lady that had said she'd lost her child. Where do you draw that line? And that's for each individual. That's a decision for each one to make. But I tell you, Charlene, when I got home, I quit my job. I was on the tube like a wild woman, like, oh my gosh, gosh, oh my gosh. And the next morning I woke up and I had nothing else to do except to make sure my son was happy and my husband was supported. And then once they were gone out the house, I focused on the things I wanted to do. And then I went to the school pickup and I thought, oh my gosh, this is what empowerment feels like. And that for me was my story. And that really was the beginning of the rest of my life. And you can't say to every woman in the corporate, quit your job and run for the hills. But you can, because you're capable there, it means you'll be capable anyway. You really will be capable anyway. And I think another thing we don't realize as corporate women, I don't know if you can agree with this, is you give so much of who you are to that corporate. And I always said to my husband, my boss, he's like my father, he's like a mentor, he's like all these things rolled into one. And he was an amazing, amazing man. But you tell that person you're leaving, you matter not. Within the next second, you matter not. And there was another person there a month later who I don't know how, I mean, in my opinion, I would say maybe they didn't do as good a job of me. Who cares? You matter not. Do you understand? So if you've got a gift to give, putting it in the right direction is definitely something to consider.
I love that you said that. And can you tell us about the inception of Fierce Nature? And the reason I'm so passionate about talking about this is also to inspire women that success leaves traces, right? You were successful in corporate, very successful. And guess what? You became successful again, just in a different manner, in your own terms. And I think that's what's so important to also hold as a belief, right? Success is success, and you can excel in different domains, and you don't have to trade off something so dear, so near to your heart to continue to succeed. So I would love your inception story.
That trade-off is not necessary. I can't agree with you more what you just said. So yeah, I had no idea I would go on to be like a serial entrepreneur, like where you can't stop. You're like, oh my gosh, this is. But once I got rid of that guilt, that feeling of needing to rush home. I mean, I was sweating on the tube, panicking. All moms know what it feels like. And then the child does feel sad. They feel the mommies at the back talk more. I mean, gosh, that's like that hurts. So once that went away, I had this new drive inside of me that was 10 levels higher than what I'd had before when I was constantly in bank station, desperate to get back to Parsons Green to my children. So that went away. I'd filled there was no trade-off. And then I just had this drive that was unlike anything I'd ever experienced before, and everything was on my own terms. So Ossa was founded in 2013. It wasn't until a while later that I founded Fierce Nature, 2020. But in entrepreneurial terms, nothing is impossible. It doesn't matter what age you are. It doesn't matter how many hours you work. It doesn't matter when you work. It doesn't matter. It's all just about finding what you love, finding that place where you want to make a difference, and going on and doing it. And the rewards for me were so, so, so much greater. So I'd learned about food, gut health, toxic load. And I'd learned how my gut health and toxic load had been impacted through these years of anxiety and stress and churning, to climb up a corporate ladder. And then I'd got into bone broth, paleo, eating good fats, understanding how to nourish the body as opposed to depriving the body. And from there, I jumped onto the toxic load understanding, which a lot of women struggle with. And especially when we overlay stress with an underlying nutritional deficiency or an autoimmune disease, or even guilt. Even guilt of missing your children can make you sick. You overlay stress on top of that, and your toxic load suddenly becomes a problem. And women are dealing with things like insomnia or dark bags under the eyes or hair thinning or facial hair as overcompensation for lack of fat in the diet, or moodiness, menopause, infertility. It's all interconnected. And that's when I realized, okay, so hold on a minute. What we're putting on our skin is equally as important as what we're eating. And then I also went through the motions with my 3 sons with eczema, and started to really dive deep into all the things I'd learned in my life, and overlaid that with the microbiome of a newborn and what we were putting on their skin and what we were being told is right for our children and what is not right. And that's when I just actually I was supplying everyone in the neighborhood with this tallow-based skincare that I was making at home for my sons, and seeing huge results in using tallow, which is, I think it's a Greek or a Latin word actually for sebum, which is this oil that the skin produces. It's completely the same. It's bioavailable to the skin. The skin recognizes it as a food. And that's when Fierce Nature was born. And I can't. It is like there was two parts of my life. There was the corporate me, and then the entrepreneurial me, and I've never looked back. And I've had such fun. And the lessons in building businesses where you see change in other people's lives has been. I mean, you must feel the same with clients where you see them go from X, Y. It's extraordinary. There to me is no greater gift, and I do it on my own terms. And I have children that are happy and fulfilled and feel my presence. So I'm so grateful for that.
Thanks for tapping into this podcast today. I just wanted to take a quick break to acknowledge all the wisdom that Catherine has shared with us, and perhaps you're listening and resonating with how challenging it can be to maintain a corporate career and also look after your family and continue to thrive and find joy in all the precious moments in your personal life. If you're currently feeling anxious, overwhelmed, you're wondering how to continue to do it all, and you're feeling a bit burnt out, I would love to have a conversation with you to give you some of the tools and strategies that I've deployed in my own life, but I also now have worked so wonderfully well with so many high-powered women just like you. So if you are curious and if you want to talk about how coaching could help you reach your goals and find a little bit more peace and joy in your day-to-day life while maintaining this high-powered career, I would love to have a conversation with you. Go ahead, on the show notes, you will find a link to my strategy call and book a time so that we can have a virtual coffee. I can't wait to talk to you.
I love that you shared that, Catherine. And you know what I found amazing about your story and where I really resonate is I believe that when you work in a toxic environment, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but maybe this is a bit of an idea that I have and a theory that I hold, but I believe that the more toxic things are around you, the more toxic you tolerate. So I was in a very toxic marriage. I had a very toxic work relationship, mostly through my own mindset. So I mostly take the blame for it. I think that I'm the primary person responsible for the marriage and the work I was in. And I had a very toxic life, using tons of toxins, no idea, lack of awareness, lack of time, love the convenience, just putting all the things on my face, hoping it lasts forever because I had no time. So, 72 hours mascara. Yes, let's do that. Waterproof things, the things that don't even get removed if you use makeup remover. Deodorants that promises you that you can, last hours because I was going to court, running around, just all this kind of really, really toxic things. And what you don't realize is that you're like in that toxic wheel, right? So you have a toxic marriage, you have toxic relationship, you have toxic work environment, and then you come home and you use all that toxic stuff all around, and you need more and more of those toxins to sustain that pace. And then one day you wake up, you've got adult acne, which happened to me, diagnosed with chronic insomnia, general anxiety disorder, divorce, separation, you lose your stepson, all the things that fall apart, right? And when I look back, I think when I started to clean up my emotional life and my psychological life and my emotional landscape and my pace of life, I also started to remove the toxins in my life.
Oh, I mean, totally. And I'm so sorry you went through all of that. But at the same time, it's in suffering, it's in the fire that we're formed, isn't it? Like,
Right.
so I always look at suffering as a gift. And the Bible speaks really openly about suffering being how you're forged into the weapon that you're supposed to be, the sharpest sword you could ever be. But yes, unfortunately, the lower your bar when it comes to just surviving, not thriving, that a bit of a cliche kind of statement, but it's so true. The more you're willing to accept, and the less that you believe that you actually should and deserve to be living as a vital human being, vital state of mind, vital emotional state, vital relationships, looking vital. When you look at someone in their face and their eyes, you see that vitality shining from them. You can't fake it. That is how we are designed to live. But the more that we live in that very low level, the more we begin to believe that that is what life is. And then you listen to the media and they say, well, everyone has diabetes. And 40% of women have chronic fatigue syndrome. And there's, it's just, that's life. No, it is not. And unfortunately, the way that the world is we as women have to take it into our own hands. And as the mothers of households, with children or without children, as the matriarch, the female lead in a home underneath the husband, we have to design within our four walls the environment in which we want our families to thrive. And that is the key word, because vitality comes with hard work, and it comes with a very high expectations. And that's what I always say to women first and foremost. If something's not meeting your expectations, get rid of it. Really, honestly. And marriage is, I'm not talking about marriage in that instance, because you well know the complications and it's a different story. But I'm saying when it comes to what you're feeding yourself and what you're putting on yourself and the things you're watching and the things you're exposing yourself to and the conversations you're having with the people that are closest to you. You know, when you leave a conversation, you feel awful. That is an awful conversation.
Yes.
So every part of your life has to be edified, lifted up. And it does start with the hard stuff, which is like, what am I eating? What am I putting on my body? What air am I breathing? Where am I sleeping? And what am I watching? And then from there, everything else kind of can come here.
And I would love to hear your thoughts on this, because I fell in the trap of what I call the money promise. So because I had quite, a high disposable income at the time, I thought my theory was quite basic but completely erroneous. The more money I spend, the better the solution. So if I walk into this really luxurious, full of toxic chemical smells, won't mention the brand name, toxic lights, everything toxic in the shop, but it's gorgeous and it's all white and gold and fancy and sparkling. And I'm promised that this particular skin cream is going to make me look younger, and I can now work 95 hours a week instead of 92 and wake up looking like Taylor Swift. And I spend $500 on the bottle, and it has a French name. I'm sure most people have figured it out. Then surely it must be good stuff, right? And I put that crap on my skin for years. Guess what? I needed more and more of it. I had like really bad patches of dehydration. I had remember at one point my skin actually peeled off. I started to develop adult acne. It was a mess, honestly. But I thought, if I'm spending that much money, surely that must be good. And can you tell us how that's completely a bit of a fallacy, really? And that's not the way to think about skincare?
Totally. I mean, my children are homeschooled, and it was after Corona that I realized, oh my gosh, I've got a job to teach these children about the actual world versus what we're learning. And the first thing we started to talk about at the beginning of 2025, because I'd done a series, and in their kind of, they go to there's a number of homeschool families in Dubai, a huge big group of us. And I was teaching on toxic load and gut health for 3 months to 9 to 13-year-olds. And these children were so clued up, because obviously their parents obviously are a bit more lateral thinking, considering they're not in a school system. But the majority of my time spent was marketing. We need to understand, what is marketing. Well, we know what marketing is. It's where you pay money to promote a product. No. Actually, it's a form of brainwashing, and it works really, really, really well. And it links exactly into your point, which is the more popular something is, the more celebrities are using something, the more value associated with the price, the elevated price of something, the more you should be receiving in return. When in actual fact, the opposite could not be more true. Simple is better. And we're never, ever encouraged to ask any questions. And that's where brand names really, really catch people. And I always say to my children, if you see toys or things advertised on TV, really think twice about it. Anything that's got like a big kind of like the too much money behind it that then sense, you've got to kind of think twice about it. And, the other thing is, like, you see these, if you'd ask anyone at Le Mer about the makeup of your skin and the ingredients and the products, and to go through all the line by line, and it's just not a part of that campaign. And that's it's that brand. It's Clinique. It's a myriad of brands. I used Clinique when I was a teenager. I burnt my skin, like you said. I burnt my skin with that yellow bar of soap that they sell, which is extremely acidic. And so I think that the key takeaway from that, and it's such a brilliant lesson for so many women, is question everything. And I spent in my year-long mastermind a lot of time teaching women that it's not that you never have to see a doctor again and go rogue and become like a hippie. But when you go to a doctor and they present you with a prescription, like when you go to a drugstore, department store, and they present you with all this range for your skin, don't be afraid to ask questions. So why have you put me on the antihistamine? And 9 times out of 10, the doctor told me, oh, because you said you don't sleep, so antihistamine will knock you out. You're like, what? I thought it was an antihistamine. I thought it was for like an allergic reaction. Yeah, but it'll also make you sleep. But then when you wake up the next morning, you'll feel drowsy. So we need to just really start empowering ourselves to take things into our own hands. And that's why I always say, if something is overly marketed or highly kind of like I don't know. I just question everything, truly and utterly question everything. And that includes when you go grocery shopping, you know. Someone came here the other day and they were like, oh, I bought you some whipped cream. And we were like, oh, whipping cream. And we were like, great, we always buy organic, British, or in England or here from the farms, organic whipping cream. And you turn around some of these creams, and for someone who doesn't know how to read the label, there's no cream in it. It's soya, butter, fat, emulsifier, and 3E numbers was in this whipping cream. So I was so proud. So for my son turned around and said, Mom, this isn't cream. But 99% of people wouldn't be able to do that. So that lesson for you is so valuable. Ask the questions, look at the ingredients, and don't take anyone else's word until you yourself are comfortable with what you're looking at. And people might say, I don't know how to read labels. I don't know how to do that. Well, if you don't understand a word, put it back on the shelf and move on. And the cost to value association is such a lie, because we believe we're paying for something because it is that good, but the opposite could not be more true. And I'd proved that to myself when Fierce Nature was founded. I went looking at facilities and how people think things and creams and all of that are made, and I did a year-long study into it. And the most interesting thing I learned was all lipsticks from all brands are made in the same factory, and they're just put in a different packaging. So when someone tells you that the Burberry lipstick's 50 pounds and the Kiko's 18 pounds, it's all the same stuff. And everything else is just words and promises and statements and brand, and that's it.
And so how does one start their journey? If somebody's wondering right now, what is toxic? What are the consequences? How do I know? What would you say to educate and empower our listener?
It's a brilliant question. The first thing to understand is, how do you feel in yourself? And us women generally tend to know, like you say, you're at the height of your in and out of the courtroom, you know, sophisticated. And anyone that looked at you from the outside would have gone, you know, Charlene is just, she's superhuman. But you know how you feel. You're aware of these marks on your skin. You're aware of the patches of dryness. You're aware of the burnout. So assess yourself truly and be really honest with how you feel in yourself, in your body, in your mind, in your emotional state. You know, watch what content you're consuming, and also the conversations you're having. It was a big one for me around toxic load. Like if us women are spending all day nattering about nonsense, we need to be building ourselves up. And from there, then you could go, okay, I need to make a change. The fastest place to make a change is to look at where the crutches within your eating. And often when we are very dynamic and high flying, something's got to give. You're not at the hob at home making a shepherd's pie for you and the family for dinner. How can you? And so something gives in that area. And that was another thing that absolutely opened my eyes, was like my own input into our family's meals was so valuable. Who would have thought? I was like, I don't have time for cooking. But once I got into it, and then now I've got support, because obviously I've got four children soon, and so it's a lot. I don't expect you to now be a chef, a cook at all days at home, but just your imprint at home will make a big difference. And there's a couple of books I recommend. There's a lovely book called Nourishing Traditions, and it gives you a great idea as to how to eat and the importance of fat and the brain and avoiding dementia and the skin and stuff like that, which I won't get too into here, but I would say definitely look at your diet. Try and move back to the basics. Good meat, good fat, certain vegetables, lovely fresh organic fruit, and filtered water, maybe a bit of coconut water, coffee if you have to, if you love it, here and there, but make sure you know how to source it. All this kind of stuff I talk a bit about on my channel. And from there, then look at what you're lathering and what have you been lied to about in terms of the beauty products that you're consuming and using. And how do they truly make you feel? And it doesn't have to be an overnight overhaul. I'm sure you'd agree. You don't have to throw everything in the bin and be like, okay, I'm never wearing makeup again. We all love to feel beautiful, but make sure you're making the right decisions. And if you are suffering with, any autoimmune condition, you can be assured that you've got to probably go quite strong in terms of your changes to make. I would say ditch the waterproof mascara, ditch the aluminium deodorant, definitely ditch any kind of aerosol dry shampoos, any kind of aerosol sun bombs. That's a very good place to start. And then from there, you can kind of say, okay, what emollients am I using on my entire body every day? Is it a Nivea or something like that, which is mostly of them are petroleum-based, and they're just full of water, which you could see when you read the ingredients on the back. And maybe make a change. You try a tallow-based body moisturizer just on your shins or on the forearms, or just take it slow, you know. And the funny thing with the skin on the face is when you start to make little changes, you will the body almost needs to detox effectively from that pull of that addiction, almost like to the chemicals. People don't realize that I think it was even Burt's Bees that's been massively sold out now. Vaseline for sure, but a lot of these lip balm brands, they actually dehydrate the lip. The whole point is what? To sell more and more and more and more and more. So you might go through a transition phase if you swap over to, say, a tallow-based balm or a zinc sun cream or something like that. And then my 3 pillars. So we've talked about it: gut health, toxic load, and then your trauma load. Where am I at in my head? Because a grounded woman is a gift from God to everyone around her. And when we are overtoxed and we have this buzzing anxiety and we are not coping day to day, we don't feel content in our life, we cannot be grounded, and then we are a curse to those around us. And we know ourselves how that can be because women are such powerhouses. So if you can look at these 3 pillars and put a few things right in each pillar, you'll see immediate respite. And then from there, you can build up to the life that you'll eventually want to live. Maybe looking at, okay, I am going to have a baby in the future. What paint might I use when I paint the nursery? Being aware of lead and toxins in paints and furniture. Looking at electromagnetic frequency where you sleep in your bedroom. And getting to that more elevated level. But to start, it is that simple thing like, am I content? Am I a gift to those around me, or am I a curse? And is it because that is not who I am? Like, women are the blessings of God on this earth, but we don't know how to look after ourselves enough, to put ourselves in first place. And we always think when we're high flying and dynamic because we're pleasing ourselves, but we're hurting ourselves to the benefit of others. And I'm not saying you can't be a content, grounded, blessed woman and also be a high-flying corporate woman at all. I'm definitely not saying that. But I am saying get yourself right, and everything else from there will just be complete transformation for you. And people will start talking. People will say, you know, gosh, wow, you know, and I feel like every one of us deserves that, truly.
Yes. And I think it's important to be really honest and to notice when there's been shift in what I call the behavior and emotional landscape. So many of my clients come to me, you know, in the sacred and safe space of a confidential coaching session and say, I can't quite believe how I just spoke to my daughter or how I just spoke to my husband. I snapped at them, and that's the worst version of me. And I love them to bits and pieces, but right now everybody's driving me nuts. I have nothing to give. My tank is completely empty. I'm on edge. I'm cranky. I'm overwhelmed. I just want peace, and I don't even want to be around people that I love and created and put on this earth, right? So when you get to that point, and I relate to that because I've been at that point, something's got to change, right? And again, it doesn't mean you've got to quit your job, but it does mean you need to really assess your life and think which domain is not working for me right now. How am I operating? And if I were to assess this life that I'm living from the outside in, what intervention would I make? Because I think as women, we're really, really good at nurturing, mothering, advocating for other people. And if we were to look at that situation play out as if it was somebody else, we would know what to do. We would know how to step in.
So true. So true. We let ourselves become so completely bogged down. The key is you've got so much, you've got this purpose in life that you're here to give, to do, to be. And where are you going to put that energy? Because we don't talk to our bosses and we don't talk to our colleagues in that tone. And so you have then that's such a brilliant way of, it's like the suffering and the fire. It's a lovely way for a woman to note, okay, I'm definitely directing everything in the wrong direction. Because my son, my children, my husband, you know, they are here forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. Whereas Mr. Bossman might get fired, moved across the country, but we're directing all of our energy towards keeping maybe the wrong people happy. Could be the first sign. But I think the absolute realization of getting to a place like that is I'm not giving myself enough. And clearly you're not listening enough to yourself. I did not listen to myself for years until my notebook said, quit your job. I mean, I was like, oh my gosh, like this is the funniest thing ever. And again, like you and I were saying, that doesn't mean everyone has to quit their corporate job and run for the hills. No, not at all. But please put boundaries in place because you deserve it. And as we become older, as we become more proficient at our jobs, we deserve it. I mean, I remember coming into the office, and I'm not a feminist by any stretch of the imagination, and I've never been. But I remember the men were so good with themselves. They would come in, I don't know what time, whenever they felt they got there. They would do their work. They would be good at it. The secretaries would be supporting with everything. And then at 12, they would go to the gym for an hour. Then they'd go and get a grass-fed steak, and then they'd go and get a smoothie and get some time out on the steps. And then they'd come back to, whereas as women, we're like, what's everyone going to think? And, so it's okay to be high-flying and have boundaries in place. It gives you much more respect. And to say, I'm a mother. So right now I'm going home to my child who needs me. And I felt like when that's still, as I said in my story to begin with, that still wasn't enough for me. But if you feel fulfilled in that place and all that edginess goes away, then that's perfect. But you cannot live without those boundaries, whereby first and foremost that these are your values and you'll never let them go. It's really important.
And what are your values, right? I didn't have value health at the top of my pyramid. I'll be really honest. Like it was not even a consideration. It was money, success, and what I perceived to be, the accolades and the award and the title and the security and the status and the promotion. Like those were my values, but I wasn't aware. So I did a value map, and that was so interesting because actually I didn't really have personal life values at the top of my pyramid. It was all corporate, which is not a bad thing. Those can be good for fuel and motivation and drive, etc. But if you have none of the wellness and health values, no wonder you're not healthy. If you're not actually setting that as a goal. And what really struck me is when my coach at the time said, is health one of your goals? I was like, what do you mean? Like, what? Of course not. Well, then how do you think you're going to be healthy? Like if wealth was one of your goals, you went and you did it, right? You went and you did, I'm a go-getter, right? I'm a superwoman. You're going to go and get it because that was a goal. But if a healthy marriage, if a healthy relationship if a healthy body is not a goal, are you surprised you're not getting closer to it? And so for me, it was so empowering as a type A go-getter woman that I still am, by the way. I haven't changed my personality type. I just changed or added health as a key goal to my value system. And that changed everything because then I became a go-getter for health.
Yeah, that is unbelievable. And I don't think many women look, because of how busy we are, at what we're actually driving ourselves towards,
No.
And marriage is a massive way shower. Like it brings out the best and the worst in all of us. And it's a difficult place. Like it's like the fire, you both have to be shaped within the bounds of a marriage. And then comes the children, and we don't ever have enough time to sit down and think actually what it is that truly, truly, truly matters to me. And I've had many kind of revelations throughout my life whereby the first for me was with the first pregnancy. Okay, health is a goal for me. Before I thought, I don't know, I just listened to what they tell me to eat. And if everyone was eating salad at the time and everyone was juicing kale and everyone was, I don't know what we were doing, then I started to listen to my body and learned how I needed to eat and never felt better. And so yeah, that value system is hugely important. I was the same as you. I had a coach when I became made up as a partner, then suddenly they give you all these things, we had these coaches. And she also said to me, what are your values? I'm like, what do you mean? Like literally, I don't know what you mean. So I think it's a lovely exercise for a woman to do. And then for me, it was also the spiritual side of things. So really what is your value system founded in, and what do you believe, and what is the point of everything? And that's probably a conversation for another day because we could probably go for hours into that. But I do think that when you take a step back from your life and how hard you're working and how you've designed and built your life and how you end up treating your husband, the state of your marriage and the emotional state of your children or the neediness or the lack thereof, whatever it might be, that you take a step back, go, what is the greater purpose for my life and where am I actually headed? And your values are uniquely tied into that actual end destination. And looking from that zoomed out perspective, and some women need help doing it, which is why it's amazing they're women like you, and others might be able to just see for themselves. It gives you a little bit of perspective into like what every day, because what's that saying? Tell me how you live every moment, every minute, every hour, and I'll tell you how you live your life.
Exactly. And Catherine, I would love to ask you a question that is related, but perhaps leading to a different direction, is how would you talk or perhaps help a woman that is listening to this conversation and thinking, right, let me just put health back on my value list, or at least add it for the first time, and then I'm getting a conflict because I'm looking at what you do and how you eat, and it's got a lot of beef, a lot of tallow, a lot of animals, and personally I haven't had to had that conflict or that debate with myself because I'm really primal. I believe in the ancestral health, I believe in hunter and gatherers, and I believe that one of the closest way to live with nature and in sync with nature is through eating animals and just living in sync with nature. But I know a lot of women are conflicted about eating animal-based product, about putting animal-based fat on their skin. And I've had that debate with, brilliant, smart, kick-ass women in my clientele that said, I'm not putting beef fat on my face, period. Right. I just I want to bring that to the forefront of the conversation because I know that can feel very uncomfortable for some of us. So what would you say there, and what could be some of the intellectual lever that we can pull to ease that conversation?
The key for anyone listening is your body will show the way. And I can't say to you, do what I do and you'll feel amazing, or do what Charlene does and you'll feel amazing. We have to come close to who we are and understand what we need. So for me, I was like, I went from a very omnivorous diet to I've eaten carnivore before, but I wasn't eating a lot of fat. Obviously, we were told through the child of the 80s, like, don't ever eat fat, starve yourself of fat. But all the ways in which my body was telling me this was wrong made me try something different. So the first thing I did before I'd been this kind of paleo, tallow, fat butter person since the pregnancy, because I wasn't thriving in my pregnancy and I thought something must be wrong, but I was starving myself of all the things the body needs. Between the two pregnancies, I decided for 2 weeks that I wouldn't eat meat. Because why? You've got to understand what your body is telling you. I did this purely because I had so many women reaching out to me saying, and it was pregnancy always that was kind of the gateway for a woman. I've been vegan my entire life. I am lying in bed at night and dreaming of steak. I walk past a butcher and I start to salivate. I need meat in my life. And I would say, great, okay, so this is you listening to your body. Forget about the way in which you think, because it could be brainwashing. We've just talked about creams and potions and lotions and marketing and branding. It is a multi-million-dollar business. It's very difficult not to succumb to all of that. And there's an element of that in the way that we eat, that we have been slightly brainwashed with the standard American pyramid, including grains, pesticides, all these things that are making us ill. It's a lie. So there could be that element. So start off with just a cup of chicken broth every day of your pregnancy. And these women completely transform. I could never sit in front of a vegan woman and say, your pregnancy will be better sustained if you eat animal products. But when she drank that cup of broth, she was like, this is what it was like. My whole life had changed. The brain kind of beefs up. People don't realize breast milk is 80% cholesterol. So what we are feeding our children is 80% cholesterol from the moment that they are born. For the first year, 2, 3, however many years women tend to feed. Does formula have a drop of fat in it? Nothing. It's got sunflower oil to emulsify all the ingredients. And now we know that's absolutely toxic and highly inflammatory to the body. So we can quickly tell that the design of nature is as God wanted us to be. And a lot of things that are marketed to and sold for money, like formula, which again is a multi-million-dollar business. And I'm not saying everyone can breastfeed, and it's not that conversation at all. I'm trying to show more that when things are sold or marketed to, they're lacking. Why does formula not have 80% cholesterol? Why are they not adding things like liver and tallow? And there was a case in Australia, must have been 15 years ago, where one of these women made her own formula. She couldn't feed. but she made an 80% cholesterol formula, and the makeup was identical to breast milk. And I think she was put in prison because she'd put tallow and liver and all these things to match the nutrient density of breast milk. And she was put in prison. So just think a little bit about it. Listen to your own body. Truly listen to your own body. You know, we have a prolific onset of Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's is a lack of fat in the diet for decades and decades and decades and decades and decades. It's all the synapses in the brain can no longer fire because a woman is so deprived of the one thing the body needs, which is fat. Fat is really a good one in relation to your question. Because women are so terrified to eat fat, they will be fat. And there's this mega agenda around fat and thinness. And in actual fact, when you're healthy and when you're vital and your body's in its ideal weight, you will never look more amazing. And you will never have to diet a day in your life. And you could be living on grass-fed steak, and you could be having egg yolk ice cream and whipped cream with berries after dinner. And satiation, nutrient density equals vitality, equals you are a 10 times better lawyer, you are a 10 times better mother, you are a 10 times better wife, whatever it might be. So you have to break down that value system that we've been taught. You have to stop listening to everything that you've been told is an absolute key to everything I always tell people. And you have to play with your own needs in your own body. So, nourishing traditions, so I'm now 37 weeks. I'm about to have a baby, like a Jew, basically.
Congratulations.
Nourishing traditions, thanks so much, will tell you to eat 4, 5, 6 eggs a day. That's no problem for me. I've been eating like that for years because I know what I was like when I wasn't vital in my first pregnancy 10 years ago. But I want people to realize that when you start giving your body the opportunity to give you feedback and listen, then something like eating a steak with rock salt and a knob of butter on it instead of a salad, you might never go back because of what you're getting from that protein and collagen in that ribeye steak versus a bunch of pesticides and oxalates in a bowl of spinach with olive oil on it. Let your body give you the, and let your skin try tallow. Don't be grossed out by it. Try it on, as I said, on your forearm, on your shin. Let your body tell you. Let your body lead you. Otherwise, how will you ever know?
I love that you said that. And you know what drew me to your tallow specifically is actually quite an intimate story. But my fiance, soon to be husband, is quite obsessed with primal diet and carnivore, and he loves meat, and so do I, and that really has drawn us together from the beginning of our relationship. But at one point, he decided to take it to the next step and put beef tallow on his face. And that was the beginning of his journey with tallow. And I remember vividly that night when, we had a beautiful steak, as always. And I went to kiss him in bed. And I was like, okay, that maybe is where I draw the line. I love meat and I love you. But right now it feels like kissing a ribeye. Like, this is not the sexiest thing in the world. And that comes from a girl that eats tartar and eats her steak raw, right? But that's maybe too much for me. I was like, I don't think I can do that tomorrow night. Can we investigate and find you the same tallow, but maybe that smells a little sexier. And he was like, oh, I don't mind it, man being man. He's like, it smells good to me. I was like, yeah, of course it does, but you're not the one kissing yourself, are you? So we made a deal that he will continue to wear tallow, and I would start to wear tallow if we were to find tallow that smells attractive. And we found you. So that's the story.
We were on an airplane, and at this stage, I hadn't found a fierce nature. I was using the Ossa organic tallow out of the jar and mixing it with jojoba, coconuts, and I was always covered in it because once I started to use it, and once my skin was fed, you fall in love with it. But my husband was like, we're on a plane, like we're on a plane, and all I can smell is ribeye, and I was like, don't be ridiculous. But I feel just like your husband, male or female. When you're so in love with the idea of it, you're like, you can't smell it. You're like, what? But fierce nature, I really wanted to make it more accessible for people. And we did try and move away from essential oils. Our vanilla balm is one of my absolute favorites because we steep the tallow in. Yeah, you've got it right there. We steep it in
Smells like
in
cookie
natural
dough.
vanilla.
I don't
Yeah,
know how you did that, but and literally you can see the vanilla beans. I'm obsessed with it. I love it
yeah,
so
I
much.
love it, and it spends 3 weeks seeping in a vat of organic, real vanilla bean. And we worked with that recipe for so long because we started with vanilla bean powder, then we tried vanilla essential oil, and I'm quite like into gotten into understanding that some essential oils are so strong that if you're weak or you are overly burdened toxic load wise, essential oils can wipe out all the good as much as they wipe out all the bad. So that's why the vanilla bean was so important to me. But please send your fiance love because that's so funny. And it's so funny to be the first in the relationship to start to use beef fat. And when I launched beef fat through Ossa Organic in 2015, I had friends around for lunch and I was like, guys, we got this new product. And it was obviously just the jar of beef fat, which we use for roasting and frying and cooking. And a friend of mine was like, but but the nutritionals. I'm like, what do you mean? The nutritionals just say 100% fat. I'm like, he's like, you're selling a jar of fat. I'm like, oh yeah. And then just you fast forward now and it's just that education piece that was needed for 10 years of people. And again, that massive campaign against butter for sunflower oil, against fat for low fat. We really, I wish people would start to look into all of that and understand how much we've been lied to about what's on supermarket shelves to eat, to put on our skin, our face, our hair, baby products, medicines, vaccinations. And so we go on and on and on and on. I think if you take nothing else from today, I would just hope that it was that ability to give yourself enough boundaries to be content in your life and proud of who you are, and then to start asking a million different questions about everything that you're told.
And what's interesting, Catherine, as well, is, going back to the conversation around convenience, at first it may feel like you have to let go of some of the things you're accustomed to. But I don't know about you, but I used to, even though I was super busy and super overwhelmed, my skincare routine was super complex. It's like you didn't need a PhD in biochemistry to do what I did. It's like I had step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. I had a cream for like the under part of the eyes. Then I had a cream for the side part. And then I had a cream for around the lips, then the lips, then that one. And then the lotion and the toner and the remover. And it just my traveling equipment just for my beauty product was half of my suitcase. And it was just all toxic crap now that I look back and look at the ingredients. Whereas what I do now is I remove my makeup with the tallow. So the same tallow that I will then apply. And it's super moist, it's gorgeous, it feels nice. If you add a bit of water, that really helps. It kind of very gently removes everything, even mascara. I wash it off. Then I put organic rose water. I suppress toner, just really organic, the one that you can actually drink and consume in tea. So it's food grade and it really closes my pore. And then I really love to put the tallow. So either the vanilla one, or I'm a big fan of the sweet orange one as well. I think it's a really nice, gorgeous smell for the nighttime. And it goes really well with the rose, supplements my routine. And that's about it. When I work out, I've done a sauna, a steam room. My skin is a little bit more dehydrated, so I like to use your magnesium balm. I was just looking for it.
I also love
I think it's
one.
amazing for post recovery after workout because the magnesium really soaks into your skin, and I find that really nice. And if I know I'm going in the sun, so I just got back from Australia where it's peak summer. I spent 2 months in Australia, and that was my only sun balm. It was the golden sun.
And you know what? When you don't burn and you're only using zinc, it's also a surefire sign that your diet is hugely optimal and that inflammation levels in your body are very low. Because there's a strong correlation with people that have high levels of inflammation and oxidation in the body and burning. So you might find someone else that lives on processed foods, is highly strung out, and has a 12-step chemical skincare routine that puts that zinc on and might burn. So it's a very brilliant way to just be assured that everything you're doing, and this is what we talked about, listening to your body is saying, yes, because it's drinking in the sun and using it for all the synthesis, the synthesis of the sun on the face of the skin is important for so many metabolic, digestive, healing processes. And zinc is all we need. But some people will still burn because of oxidation and inflammation in the body. And sunflower oil is the biggest culprit behind that. It's so fascinating to learn. But yeah, I love that. That's me too. I mean, this whole idea of 10,000 hours doing this and the next thing. The number of times I have women on the phone to me that have burnt their under eyes from under eye creams. They're the biggest scam. This is the softest, most gentlest skin underneath the eyes. It needs literally nothing. And if you get a bit of light tallow on, you can literally do that. Is about it. And if you're seeing dark rings under the eyes, then you can be assured there's toxic accumulation in the body, and there's something you can open the lymph glands in the neck, and you can use a gua sha or some version of cupping, but nothing, topical treatment of our skin is the last case scenario. It's just feeding the skin, like you talked about, that gentle, lovely feeding of the skin. The health of the skin comes from the gut at the core. You won't get rid of acne by putting creams and retinol and not retinol. What's that stuff they make you put on, like benzene and all the drying out Rakutan, those tablets that make the skin peel. You can't topically heal acne. It's internal. The skin is the outward show of the internal health of the body, and a big sign for women that their toxic load is out of balance. Psoriasis, rosacea, adult acne, body odor, a fluffy coating of like hair on the face, all that kind of stuff. It's linked to toxins and hormonal imbalance.
And now that we're talking about hormones, Catherine, and you are a mother of 3, soon to be 4, can you tell us what we do wrong in terms of expecting moms or aspiring moms? Because I have so many clients right now as we speak struggling with fertility, just going through all kinds of procedure, not getting pregnant, or going through their 3rd miscarriage. And it's really heartbreaking, and I see a real surge of infertility and struggles. I would love your take perhaps on what is it that we do out of lack of knowledge, or because we don't know better, that we could do slightly differently to have a more holistic lifestyle, and how could that impact our hormones?
Wow, it's such a good question. Infertility is prolific, and unfortunately, the modern world tells us, so if you've got enough money, you can just do 3 to 7 rounds of IVF and do it that way, but it shouldn't have to be like that. And unfortunately, infertility is a result in many cases, not all, of chronic imbalance in either male or female or both for a long period of time, leading up to the point of trying to conceive a child. In the studies that I've done on infertility and all the learnings that I've had over these 10 years of walking this kind of journey, it's also linked to things outside of our control. So it's probably a bit beyond the scope of today, but really your spiritual health, your mental health, all of that is a big connection. But mostly the body won't be able to sustain life without being vital in itself. And we're not told enough about the years leading up to trying for a baby and the importance of the things that the body needs to have at the ready before we even try to conceive. And it comes back to the thing that's come up again and again in this conversation is the contraceptive pill and the use of chemicals in our body to stop or negate pregnancy for 20, 15, 10 years before we do decide we want to have a child has a myriad of implications on the woman's health when it comes to fertility, and then the way that men are living as well, hugely strung out, also extremely stressed, alcohol abuse, drug abuse, not being exposed to the right types of foods. And as men get older, the way that they kind of, like the thinning or the loss of hair, or like men would use poor behaviors to cope. I mean, we see it's probably a bit beyond the scope of today, but you see coping mechanisms like pornography addiction, gambling, alcohol, drugs, all of these types of things, because of that circle you spoke about earlier, that toxic circle that just fuels itself around and around and around and around and around. And both men and women need to be optimal in order for conception to take place. Conception is a gift from God. I mean, the Bible says, go forth, have dominion, multiply, make, populate the earth. It's our God-given right as human beings to conceive and to grow children. But so much gets in the way. And I don't quite know where to start, but I totally believe that for anyone who's unable to conceive or suffering with infertility, there's 100% a way around it. And you can 100% naturally conceive your baby by looking at the 3 pillars I talked about: gut health, toxic load, trauma load. And the key is that you need to start with that beefing up of your nutrition. And I am talking here now: liver, animal fats, proteins, collagen, high levels of vitamin C, certain supplements, which I can't, I know full well, but I can't ramble them off now because it doesn't work for everyone. And I don't want everyone to just go and buy all these supplements and think, no, I'm going to be fine or whatever. But really digging deep into that, lowering your toxic load, your stress, your emotional contentment, where you're at, the work that you're doing, where your energy is going. It takes a huge amount of energy to grow a baby. Is the mum ready for that? Is there space in their life? All these kind of things. And I'll close on that with this fact that people don't realize, and that is that in the UK, dental health is free for 9 months of pregnancy and 9 months after. And people don't know why. Because people are so malnourished that if they do manage to conceive, at all costs, our body is designed for that fetus to be viable and to be optimal in every which way, for your baby to be perfect. 10 fingers and 10 toes, beautifully formed, no cleft lip, a beautiful wide jaw, space for the teeth to form. Imagine the design of God. You can't. We can't. And humans can't. You can in vitro, you can inject, you can artificially fertilize a woman, but you cannot artificially create a baby. Cannot be done. So for all of that to happen in its perfect design, that child will pull everything that the mother has in their teeth from those mother's teeth if she's malnourished, in order for nothing to go wrong in that child's development. Do you understand? That's why a number of women, teeth will start to fall out and completely wither away. The number of women that have had to have like veneers, or they have composite bonding over the teeth after pregnancy, because it means that you're not well enough nourished to sustain what that baby needs. So they leach from your bones and from your teeth. That is why the NHS gives 2 free years of dentistry to mothers. So please, when I tell you that getting over the fact before you have a baby, or it's never too late, that you might eat fat or have steak at night, like you said, or put butter on everything, or read this book, Nourishing Traditions. It speaks about how this dentist, Dr. Weston A. Price, went to all the tribes and looked at their teeth, and you can go and learn about it yourself. But we're not being funny. Do you know what I mean? You and I are not talking about rubbish here. We're talking about, why would the NHS give 2 free years of the most expensive medical support in the UK? No one can afford dentistry anyway. It's so expensive. To a mother, because they know that we are living in this processed, toxic chemical world. And if we don't take it into our own hands, 9 times out of 10, the mother's teeth are ruined during pregnancy. So really that optimal diet, then looking at your toxic load and your environment, your mindset, your health, how content you are, how guilty you are, how stressed out you are, and how and then that trauma load, which is your emotions and your spiritual health. And in my podcast, I've only recently spoken about it, but I speak about my experience with God and God coming back into my life and what that has meant for me, and what I've learned about like blessings and curses, and what the Bible has to say about everything. Do you know that the Bible tells us to be entrepreneurs? It's like written in the Bible. Oh, it's like, oh my gosh. So that is definitely beyond the scope of today's podcast, but I do speak about my testimony and the walk that I went through. There's 31 episodes there if anyone wants to know more about that. And I do have a couple of episodes on toxic load and gut health and stuff like that. But infertility, again, it's like that fire. Don't ever let suffering stop you. Rather say, thank you, God. Okay, I can't conceive a baby right now. I need to get everything in order so that when I do, I am the most optimal version of myself, so that this child is the most optimal version of itself. And we have this life living optimally, which you would never have learned potentially any other way. You know what I mean? Use that suffering if you can. You can, just do.
I'm so glad you mentioned that. And then I love the fact that your run and your product can actually be the companion for expecting moms throughout the journey. When they get to the point where they actually are expecting mothers, they can continue to use those products safely. And I wanted to bring that up because I recently stayed at one of my acquaintances' house, and she's expecting, and I had a look at the things she was putting on her belly to prevent stretch mark, and I just couldn't help but, with love, tell her that perhaps that wasn't the greatest idea to rub all these products on her belly while she was expecting. The ingredients, Catherine, it was the scariest thing. There was perfume, phthalates, parabens, just and to think that you're putting that on your belly. And then I had a look at products that she had bought for when the baby's born, and this like newborn baby filled with chemicals. Just doesn't that shock you that we do that? And obviously it was for lack of not knowing better, and the minute she was informed, she wanted to hear more. But what are your thoughts around that, and is that also one of the reasons you're so passionate about what you do?
It's a huge reason I'm so passionate. And I sit with woman after woman after woman, week after week, and I'll sit with them, and they'll have this massive problem. It tends to be when the child's like 7, 8, or 9 that they've realized, okay, I've gone around the medical system for 7 years and nothing's changed. I need to do something different. But we will look at prescriptions and things that they've been told, and it's all the same. The doctors are not telling anyone different from the next. The prescriptions and the way that they're doing things are all the same. But it also falls into buying that expensive beauty lotion product and buying low-fat yogurt when you could buy full-fat Greek organic. It's all brainwashing. It's a form of brainwashing. So bless this amazing woman. How is she supposed to know? And all mothers go out there and they buy baby sun cream that's all over it says newborn safe and 100% natural. I mean, that's what it actually says. I have to cry. I turn it over and I'm like, oh my gosh. Or my friends' children get sunburned and they're like, we use 100% natural aloe gel. You can't get 100% natural aloe gel. If you want aloe gel, go pick the plant and rub it on your child. But no one knows. And that's why these conversations that we're having today are so important, because unless someone tells you out of love, or you hear a story that you relate to, or something today in this podcast sparks your spirit to think differently a little bit about life, there's a massive agenda. As I've said it, I had to say it 10 times in this hour. There's a massive agenda with multi-million-dollar budgets behind it, trying to move us away from natural and towards this rubbing of whatever on our bodies. And I had it with my first son. I think about the creams and I'm like, what was I doing? And it was this prolific eczema that at the time I thought, God, why does my baby have this eczema? What did we do to deserve this? Now every day I'm like, thank you, thank you, thank you, because it completely changed my trajectory and how I was looking at things and made me make a change. So yeah, it's amazing that you could speak to your friend, and it's amazing she had said the Bible speaks about having ears to listen, because you can talk to people and if they don't have ears to listen, what can you do? But you just need that one moment where a person goes, huh? No, I need to know more, because I was about to, the doctors will tell you to give your child Calpol anytime they need it, to give them these anti-reflux drops anytime they need it. A client of mine was told to put Protopic, a cancer-causing, in my opinion, and in the opinion of many, many, many studies, but not the doctors, really strong anti-inflammatory steroid on her child, just in case. So really it just goes back to that. Please question everything. Try to learn how to read labels. Reach out to people like you and me. I'm so open to really giving people 2 cents on voice notes about anything, and be open to change and listen to your body and listen to your gut instinct. It's the biggest problem with today is that we're told as human beings, it starts at school. Sit down, shut up, and listen to the teacher. No one is told, question, how does it feel for you? Does that method suit you? Does that style of learning suit you? And that's why we become these conditioned A types, because that's what, in order to achieve or to feel worth or fulfillment, we have to be at the top of our game. And that ends up hurting us, always, in all cases for us, women like you and me. In all cases, it ends up hurting us. So it's not about being less of who you are, just like you said, or changing your personality, but it's about giving yourself the grace to realize that your achievement and your worth doesn't have to be within inside of a system. It can be outside of the food system, outside of what you're told to put on your skin, outside of how you're told to learn, outside of what you're told to do with your baby, outside of the checks that they tell you that you need, the vaccinations you may or may not need, and it does go on and on and on. But don't be overwhelmed. Just make one change. And if today just for you is about one change where you chuck your aerosol deodorant in the bin and you start with a natural one, I think that's an amazing start. I truly do.
Thank you, Catherine. And where can our listener find your products? Which countries do you deliver to? We have quite a global audience. So could you just give us a quick feel? Where's the best place to get your products? Where do you deliver? And then what is the best way to get connected to your beautiful world?
Oh, amazing. Thanks. So I'm on Catherine at Catherine_Farrant on Instagram is my personal channel. And as I said, I'm about to have this beautiful baby, so I'll be around, but probably a bit less than more. And then I'll both Fierce Nature and Ossa Organic are available in the UK and the UAE at fiercenature.co.uk, fiercenature.ae, and the same for Ossa Organic. We're soon to be in the EU through Amazon. In some countries in Amazon, you can get the products in the EU. I think Spain's the one kind of exception to that. And then also outside of the GCC will be available as well. But at the moment, it seems like most of our kind of customers are shopping from the US through the UK sites. But our Instagram, Fierce Nature UK or Ossa Organic, will give you everything you need to know. And we try to educate as much as possible. And as always, feel free to reach out to me through my personal channel. And I'm always very happy and open. As I said to you earlier, like once I realized that a part of the work that I was doing was helping to change other people's lives, it never, ever felt like work ever again. And that is my absolute calling beyond selling a product, beyond building up my brands, is if I could just say one thing, by the grace of God, that sparks something in someone, a woman, a mother, a husband, a daughter, whoever it might be, and they want to make one bit of change, your life changes. But then it's like what you said earlier. And then you're going to go looking for a vanilla tallow-based product, and there will be the solution. So for me, the product's at the end of the journey for the individual. If you understand the education piece and the inspiration that you can have a better life and you can be so empowered in yourself. That's my passion. Yeah.
Thank you, Catherine. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I can't wait to see your baby in a picture.
Oh, thank you. I'm so excited. I mean, sure, glory to God, because we very much have three beautiful, beautiful boys, and my husband was like, if I didn't think this baby was a gift from God, I'd be seriously overwhelmed. I was like, yep, we are going to have 4 children, but we are so grateful. And I think as we talked about, like when you're struggling with infertility and when you walk this journey to being a mother, even if you don't ever want to be a mother or you not whatever, but I'm not speaking only to mothers. I'm just saying that anything in life that suddenly feels out of reach to you helps you never to take something like this for granted. And so this baby's only ever been seen as an absolute gift to our family, and we're so grateful for it, and we don't take it for granted because we know how hard all of it. It's not just, you don't just have a child. You know what I mean? It really doesn't just work like that. So it's been so beautiful to see it through that lens of like, this is a miracle and a gift, and we're so grateful.
Mm. Oh, thank you, Catherine. That just gave me goosebumps. Love it. Thank you. I'm really so grateful and so glad that we've connected, and I really appreciate this meaningful conversation. Thank you.
I loved it, Charlene. Thank you. And it goes exactly to what I said as a close, which is really everything that you open your ears and your eyes to should edify you, build you up. And I feel so built up by this conversation, and I'm grateful for every minute of it. Thank you for having me.
Me too. Thanks.
I'm so glad that you took a moment to listen to this podcast where you got to know Catherine, who is the founder at Fierce Nature. And I've been using her product on my skin, my body for the past few months, and I've really noticed quite a significant change. So I would love to share a very special gift with you. And I'm so grateful to Catherine and her team for giving me this code. This is a gift for you, for your skin, for your family, and for your well-being. So if you're looking for a holistic and natural solution for your skin, you can go ahead and discover her range of product by putting in the code Charlène Gisèle 10 at checkout so that you get a 10% discount on all your shopping. I hope you'll enjoy the products as much as I have.